What's up, Women Automotive Network? It's your girl, Caroline Trudeau, back for another edition of our leadership interview. I'm joined today with April Stevens from Ford Motor Company. What's up, April?
Good morning, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Good morning and good afternoon. We are expecting a gang to join us today. It's super exciting to see the interest in the topic that we're bringing today. First, I want to give our girl Stephanie May a little quick shout out because you all met for the first time, I believe, at the Detroit Summit earlier this June, right?
That is correct.
Nice. And it wasn't very long after that she reached out to me and said, "Oh, hey girl, I have somebody that I would like to pair you up with for our October leadership series. Are you in?" And I'm always in. So I was really excited to be paired up with you and explore the polarities between introverts and extroverts in our industry. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody here to know that I'm the extrovert in this gang.
What? No. You can tell it from your LinkedIn profile picture. You're all like, hey, look at me.
I love it. And I love yours with the beautiful background and just the poise.
Super serious.
Yeah, the diva poise, if you will. I want to give you a moment before we dive into the topic to introduce yourself to the audience, like proper introduce yourself, because to LinkedIn, we're so much more than our profile, our picture, our title. And sometimes what we see on the outside isn't always what's happening in your real world. So proper introduce yourself to the gang, please, and put it in the context of your fabulous career in automotive.
Okay, fabulous career in automotive. So whether I knew it or not, I was born Ford Blue. I'm third generation Ford. My extended family is committed over 160 years to Ford Motor Company. So yeah. So I am working on my 24th year. In 15 days, I'll have 24 years here at Ford.
Making a note.
I've had such an amazing opportunity to span between manufacturing, engineering, and operations, and really understanding the enterprise of manufacturing and what it takes to deliver good products to our customers. It's been so exciting being able to jump back and forth, and not everybody has that ability. It has required me to move a couple times, and I think we'll get into that a little bit. But I am middle child. I am an introvert. I am still having this argument with people at work as just yesterday. Someone's like, "What? You're not an introvert." I'm an introvert. I swear I'm an introvert. And it's interesting the energy that I am able to bring to various roles that I've had in Ford Motor Company, but also the expense of that. Right. It takes a lot for me to do that. So while I'm able to do it and I love to do it, I absolutely love this company. I want to finish my career at this company. I want to continue to contribute. So kind of funny story. I actually started my automotive career almost 30 years ago. And I know you just can't think that's possible.
Impossible.
Yeah, it's true. I started as a UAW line worker at Toledo Jeep. So I was born and raised.
People.
I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. So go Rockets. Very hard to say here in Michigan. I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan, so I know the haters. Come on, bring it. Big game's coming. Coming up there, I've always had this spark of independence. So I don't know if it's the middle child thing. I don't know what it was. And I've always wanted to win. So I didn't want my parents to have to pay for my college. So I wanted to get a scholarship. I didn't initially get a scholarship. So Toledo Jeep was recruiting when I was going to University of Toledo. And they're like, come work come work on the line. And I remember going home and telling my dad that I was going to do this. And he's a Ford guy, 30 plus years at Ford, right? And he's like, yeah, that's you can't do that. I mean, in a fatherly, positive way, right? I think it wasn't, I think he wanted more from me. We'll just leave it at that. But there was a sense of there's no way you can do that work. You're going to have to take off those nails, like you're going to get dirty. And that was enough to kind of spark the, oh, I can do this. And oh, by the way, I'm going to do it and I'm going to pay for my own college. So that's how I started my automotive career, was being a UAW line worker for almost 6 years.
It's incredible. Also in our prep, some of the stories that you shared about, how varied your journey has been in the industry and how you entered it from, a place that's definitely unconventional. And I love hearing you say this is something new, that you're gonna finish your career there, and this is the place that you're committed to. What keeps you motivated to stay at Ford and to stay in the automotive industry for literally what will be an entire career?
That is a fantastic question. And I think no matter what my role has been in the company, it ultimately has been about making things better. So whether it is making a better product, if it's improving a process, if it's improving quality, but at the end of the day, the people in this company are fantastic.
The people.
It really, for me, it is about the people. And I'd like to think that no matter where I've worked in a lot of our different facilities, some of our big truck plants in Kentucky, here in Dearborn. I worked at Louisville Assembly in different capacities, and I've launched in a lot of our plants in Mexico and Canada and the US. I'd like to think that maybe the mark that I leave is coming from a place of really trying to understand the why. I have my own why, and it is about making it better for those who come after. But also what motivates people, and how do we make sure that the products and the decisions that we're making in the company are longstanding, that they're the right thing for the company, not just for the now, but for the long view.
For the long road.
But the people, I mean, that is our biggest asset. And I have met some amazing people on the journey.
Well, speaking of some amazing people, we have a gang of them here with us on this LinkedIn Live right now. I've got Holly from the network joining us backstage. She's playing the role of executive producer. So shout out to Holly for managing the conversation with the audience. I want to know, where are the people coming from that are joining us today? Because you amaze me with the amount of places that you've been. And yet today, just sort of circling back to Dearborn, where you're joining us from, which is super cool. In all of this, in all of this experience that you have, you said in your introduction that you are for sure an introvert. How self-describe the introvert that you are? Because I vibe with you, on an energetic level. To me, it's more about that connection than sort of the polarity. What do you use to self-describe yourself as an introvert? And what's the career been like for someone like that in all of the places that you've been?
So, I think it's varied based on the role that I've been in. I think when you're in the front line in our plants, I think objectives can be clearer in terms of,
right,
I've got to keep people safe. I've got to deliver quality. I've got to do it within cost. I have to make improvements. It's a little bit clearer. And then as I've moved through my career, you get a little bit more removed from those things you can feel and touch. So I've had to evolve in that sense, especially when the pride points for me are typically how can I help someone else? How can I make it better? How can I take my journey, my experiences, and make it easier for someone else to learn faster and go further than I am? I feel like sometimes I've had to maybe take the scenic route as an introvert. So I can be direct. And when when it comes to driving accountability, I'm absolutely direct. But I'm also someone who is quiet so that I listen first. And sometimes in this environment where we want to move really fast, you don't get heard or seen if you're an introvert. Because maybe you want to take some time to process something. Maybe that means you aren't the first one to talk or the one talking the most or the loudest. And sometimes that means you might feel like you're not seen or you're not heard. So to affect change sometimes, I would say that maybe I've had to put more effort into it. But I do really believe in building that lasting foundation, and it goes back to people. So when we're affecting change, how do we know it's the right thing and it's for the long game? And again, sometimes it takes a little more time if you're not like, look at me, look at me, look at me. Funny story about that. I even with my parents don't often share. Both my parents are still around. Love them to death. They're in Florida. So please let hurricane season be over.
Yes, please.
And God bless everybody who's been impacted this year. But yeah, like I often forget or don't prioritize sharing things that are accolades because it's just not in my DNA, even with my family. Like even my brothers will be like, hey, mom and dad said X, Y, and Z. Why didn't you tell us? And it's just not in my DNA. I shared with you last week that my dad got wind of the Detroit Summit interview from a high school friend of his. And I got in trouble because he's like, why haven't I seen this? And I was like, oh, well, I remember doing it, but I don't know that I've seen it because I don't go look for those accolades. How I feel valued or seen or where I feel like I'm contributing doesn't come from that. And sometimes that's hard when you want to climb in a company as big as Ford Motor Company.
Yeah. I think also, there's a big topic of visibility right now that I see sort of in the, in this network and the adjacent networks and with some of the executive conversations that I'm having with some clients for women to be a little bit more visible and for women to showcase their achievements. And I think in your case, the fact that you are so KPI metrics driven, right? Like performance driven from where your career has taken you and what you're responsible for, but also how equally important the business of people is to you. I think that, finding ways for each other to showcase our accomplishments and our accolades so daddy can be proud of his baby girl and also that those of us that join these types of communities can really see what's possible, especially when you're coming from an unconventional place in the industry. I'm used to seeing technologists, and the marketers and the salespeople and a little bit more HR, but like to come from the floor, the place where the rubber literally meets the road. It's a really cool. Thanks for giving me the opportunity as an extrovert who shares everything, who lives like, pretty transparently. And for me on the other side of the spectrum, I want to be seen because if I can only impact one person, regardless generation, gender, or genre, to live in their full self a little bit more every day or a little bit more because they see, for me, it's the same connection to people. Like what you see is what you can do. So talk to me then about how, what it was like for you to be nominated for the award and to make the short list. Tell me everything about that. Let's shine a little light on that for us.
So I've got to give a shout out. I don't know if she's on today, but Kelly Laktawa from FANUC. I cannot say enough about what you're doing for women, shining the light on women. And it's rare to come across somebody who is comfortable to say, oh my gosh, look what Caroline is doing. She is fantastic. It's because sometimes we still feel in this industry that there aren't enough seats at the table. And I will say when I look around the room, often I would, there's more room for us, ladies. There's more room, right? We have to be disruptive. But the fact that Kelly, I had no idea, by the way, that she nominated me. So I get an email from her one day or a text. I don't remember what. She's like, hey, check your email, because she had gotten a confirmation that the nomination was submitted and it was going through the process. And I was like, wait, what? What is this? And I was like, oh my God. But I was so flattered. And I think I said this in my Detroit Summit interview. Like, I think it does reinforce that I try really hard to be super authentic and have integrity in everything I do. But also if somebody asks me for help, like I'm I just can't say no. If I can help you, whether I think I can help you, whether I know your job because I've done it or not done it, if that's just who I am. And Kelly and I connected through others in FANUC who I'd worked in the field with in various plants. And she had this just incredible desire to stand up an employee resource group at FANUC and wanted to learn what Ford had done and my involvement in that. And honestly, I did nothing. I did nothing other than spend time with her to say, here's what I think could work. Here's some of the lessons learned we've had at Ford. Here's some pitfalls. But at the end of the day, find like-minded people who want to affect the same change. And she did that. And I was so proud to see her on the stage at the Detroit Summit, accepting Ford for FANUC and the DEI piece, because man, that girl is a powerhouse. So it meant the world to me because, again, I was not expecting it. Didn't know I was nominated. And the fact that I made the short list was absolutely incredible and touching. And it did give me a little bit of validation of, okay, people do see me, that I am trying to make a difference. And maybe it's not, exactly within my company, but the fact, and again, I don't feel like I did a lot to help her, but she thought it was enough that she was going to say, hey, look over here. And I think that women celebrating women, we need more of that.
Yes, we do. I love hearing you said it in your interview. And then for the gang that's watching, you go to Women Automotive Network YouTube channel. It's a 3-minute, 11-second precisely, because obviously I've watched it. But there's a really good interview that is a nice snapshot of your experience. And I heard you say it there too. There are enough seats. Yeah. What do you say to women, especially introverted? For me, I'm just going to be like, move out the way. I'm coming. I want to see it at the table. I'll bring my own chair. I mean, I'm now making my own table, there's an energy that comes with putting yourself out there. In my case, most of our audience identified as introverted, which I love that everybody contributed so much input in our engagement poll leading up to this. So I'm putting myself in the persona of somebody who, maybe has a little bit more of a challenge looking for those opportunities, maybe is feeling like, it takes a lot of energy for them to put themselves in a position. Like what do you say to women like that who, may be hesitant a little bit and are identifying as introverts, to give them a little bit of courage, a little boost? What's some good words of encouragement for those gals out there?
So some things that have worked for me is finding common language. So if I'm trying to solve a problem, so I was encouraged a lot through my career by various leaders, but I was encouraged early in my career to get my Six Sigma Black Belt credentials. And I'm so glad I did that because it is a universal problem-solving language. Shout out to all the Black Belts, Master Black Belts, and thank you for what you do for problem solving, right? But then through my journey, I've also found that Myers-Briggs can be a common language. Quick story, I was in a training session one time and they said, okay, introverts over here and extroverts over there. And the production manager from the plant I worked at said, April, you're in the wrong group. Extroverts are over here. I was like, girl, I am in the right group. I'm in introverts. I'm an introvert. You people wear me out. So leave me alone. Like she's calling me out in the thing, right? So again, common language, Myers-Briggs. More recently, Clifton Strengths.
Yeah.
So kind of they're just great tools to find common language with people, that it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or extrovert. It doesn't matter if our top 5 strengths are the same or not. It's a way to find common ground.
Yeah. I love the common language, not only in the world that I come from, which is, the world of words. How do we use words and experiences to make people feel something when they connect with our brand, whether it leads to loyalty or whether it leads to recruiting or a new business. We have got to find a way to connect with each other in a way that connects us emotionally. We did a great job with that in our prep. Before I talk about the Clifton Strengths, though, I want to know, what's your Myers-Briggs? Do you know your letters?
I am. So I've taken it in various times in my career. Interesting. I am a firm believer that the role that I am somewhat influences the outcome of that. But I'm
Oh,
always
did
an
it
I.
change over time?
Yes. So
Oh.
I've been an INTJ or an ISTJ, but I'm always an I. I'm always an introvert, despite what others may think. So yeah, I'm between an N and an S. But
Yeah. Okay, so that's the only one that's changed over time?
Yep.
Okay, so if you're in the audience and you know your Myers-Briggs, shout us out the letters. I'm just curious to see what kind of acronyms we can create with that. So your I never changed. That's interesting. And then if you don't know about Myers-Briggs, give it a little Google search. I've only done it once, and I was at the beginning of my career, and I am ESTJ. So we're TJ together.
Yep.
And the other two, I'm definitely an E. Interesting. So introvert, extrovert is a polarity. I was totally floored by some of the comments that came into our poll. Like I said, most people, I think 48% identified as introverts, 41% as extroverts. Shout out to my extras. But then there was a 9% sort of middle area that identified with both. Like I heard I'm an introverted extrovert, or I'm an extroverted introvert, or I'm an ambivert.
That was new to me.
Yeah, of course, I did a little bit of looking into all of that. So do you think that, it sounds like you are definitely introvert, but you sort of come and show up in the world as an extrovert. Do you think that there's a training that goes with that? Like, have you trained yourself? Is this a skill that you've had to develop over time that allows you to now be good at it, essentially?
No, I mean, I don't know. I think I think it's the middle child thing. Like I've always wanted to win. It doesn't matter. Like it just doesn't matter. I just want to win. So figuring out how to win as an introvert, maybe it's something I've learned and not really known that I've learned. But it's back to trying to tap into how do you build the foundation with our greatest asset, our people, so that you win as a team. It doesn't just have to be about me. And you started to touch on this, and again, I shout out to Stephanie May, because I was like, oh gosh, when I met Caroline, at the Detroit Summit, she was all like, no, we are not saying it is a male dominated field. We are not power. And I was like, whoa, okay, girl, I hear you. And then she said, you're going to be partnered. And I was like, oh, okay, I think we're coming from, but I mean, we immediately connected. And again, connecting with people to win, it's just, we're so much more likely to win together.
Yes, better together for sure. And that leads me to dig into a little bit. My favorite leadership principle is strength-based leadership. Like if I could I might only be talking about that these days, because it just really blows my mind how many people are focused on the things that they're not good at. Like the things that are not desirable, the things that are not socially acceptable, instead of really embracing the things that we are uniquely good at. And in our prep, that conversation led to us sort of experimenting with each other. Hey, what's your strength-based leadership approach? And we use Clifton Strengths. This is definitely not a plug for Clifton, but I recommend it to everybody that I work with, because rather than putting, this sort of Myers-Briggs approach, which is you're either E or I, you're an N or F, or, there's so much polarity. What the Clifton Strengths allows us to look at is the kaleidoscope of attributes that make you who you are. And when you look at yourself through the lens of those types of topics, like strategy, which is a top 5 that we have in common, then we realize, oh, okay, we have a place to vibe. And then the good news is that we are capable of covering more strengths when we look at how we complement each other than how opposite we are. So what's a, I mentioned strategy. What's one of your top strengths that as an introvert, like you've leveraged the most that you think in your career, specifically in automotive?
Well, I have to give you two. I'm not comfortable just giving you one.
All right, we'll go for it.
Top one is analytical. And sometimes,
Yeah.
that is my worst enemy. I want to analyze it to death. But you got to get to the right why. Like, what is the problem we're solving and why, right? But then the other one that has served me well is the learner. So really trying to come from the place of like, I truly want to learn the why, and not just from a DFEMA, PFEMA lens about like, how do we mitigate risk future state, but like, what is the impact? Because people like, and this is what I learned working on the line. Like if you're doing something for 8+ hours a day and it's super repetition, right? Chances of variability escaping that station are really, really great. Like you get bored, and let's be honest, the work isn't always specifically exciting and challenging. So that's was kind of ingrained in me about, okay, coming from the place of understanding and really learning about what is the product or process we're trying to deploy, and how do we make sure that we are driving in-station process control, and because there's all these factors that can go wrong, and how do you mitigate that in-station so it doesn't escape to the customer?
Yeah, and I could see how somebody who's analytical and who wants to learn is uniquely positioned for that sort of tasks. For me, as a maximizer, somebody that wants to help people get out of the box that they're in, like to see that's my top strengths, like to see the manifestation of all that an individual is capable of doing. Like I want to, I want to go places, like I want to be outside. I want to not necessarily focus on all of the things that make that analytical process. So together we can bring a different approach to a problem that we want to solve. I'll give you another one of mine. I have the woo, and the woo is not, energetic woo, even though, that's a kind of woo. And in the Clifton Strength language, it's winning others over. And this is where the storyteller in me comes from, right? Like I have an ability because of this top strength of mine to connect with a lot of people and to design an experience that makes them feel good, that makes them feel heard, that makes them feel something that elevates their capabilities. And so, there's besides the introvert and the extrovert, there are so many clues that we can learn about ourselves when we start to look at it through a different kaleidoscope. So I want to ask the audience real quick to start preparing some questions. Put them in the chat. Holly is going to relay those on our streaming platform here. And I want to get to some questions because it's really cool when we hear from the audience. Before we do that, like as we wait for topics to come in, I want to talk also about sort of the expense. You alluded to the expense in your career of, being introverted and sort of identifying in that way. And I want to know more about that. Like, what's the cost of not being a little bit more visible, or of talking about our results, or of not, stepping out of our introverted shells, if we will?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. So it's funny because it's really easy for me to talk to others about the importance of self-advocacy. And this is where sometimes I'm like, all right, girl, get it together. You got to do it yourself, right? I am so much more comfortable shining the light on someone else or lending somebody credibility so that they feel, oh my gosh, I am valued in a room that maybe they don't feel comfort. than I am in saying, well, look at me. I can write it at performance review time. But in the day to day, specifically in this manufacturing environment where things do move really fast, it's I feel like it's my job as a people leader, and I love leading people. I know it's not for everybody, and it's kind of weird because I'm an introvert, but is to help others navigate the things that maybe I'm still mastering. But it is so important, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, the self-advocacy piece. Like, you have to be able to self-advocate, but you have to figure out how to do it in a way that it feels authentic to who you are. So when you lay your head on the pillow at night, you're not thinking, oh my God, I was a total person. Like, because it has to feel natural. And that's something I think I'm still growing into. Like, I don't need to be the person who's always talking in the room, but sometimes in this fast-paced environment, that can be perceived incorrectly as lack of interest, lack of leadership, lack of knowledge. And that's the risk, right? It's the risk.
Yeah. I love when you put it in the sense of laying your pillow at night and feeling comfortable that what you've done, whether it's advocating for yourself in any of the situation that you may encounter during your day, or doing the work, doing your job, kicking butt and taking names and doing the thing, that when you lay down at night, you feel aligned. You feel like you've done the right thing. You've done what was needed for you to feel that way. What do you do? Like, how do you know that you're doing that? Like, for me, I sort of have a, I got to put myself out there sort of meter. The more I'm out there, the more people see it, the better I feel that I'm spreading. So like I make the effort to, create it at another level. Like I put work into it. And I know when I'm talking about what lights me on fire, because I'm clear about that it's all in alignment. And the feedback and the dialogue, essentially the conversation that starts to happen with the people that are in my life, becomes so much deeper. So how do you work on, what's important to you and how you can manifest it through visible channels, whether it's like, this LinkedIn Live here, or talking about your nomination, letting your daddy know that you had, an interview. Like, how do you work on that?
So first I'll say, and again, it's my mom and my dad. They have encouraged me throughout, and they always say, "Oh, we're so proud of you." So thank you, parents. Shout out to Mike and Caroline Stevens. But I will say that I put myself out there differently than you do. I put myself out there through mentoring, and again, when you talk about risk, we don't always have a KPI on how I performed this quarter, this half, this year, about how many people I mentored. So again, there's another risk, but that is what drives me. Is
Yeah.
I want to mentor, and it doesn't even have to be somebody in my skill team, because I learn equally as much from people that I spend time talking to. And then again, it's about building the culture. And I mean, even, we talked about this, like, we vibed immediately. Like, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can do this thing. And I was like, I jokingly said to you, I'm going to hire you as like my personal advocate, so that you'd be like, whoa, look at her, because that's just not me, but you're comfortable doing that. I'm very comfortable doing that for other people. I just continue, you have to work on doing that for me. So I guess that's how I put myself out there differently. And I don't know that is the result of being an introvert, or if it's just where I really see the value. Back to, people are our biggest asset.
Yeah.
Building and retaining talent in this company is what's going to make us stay here for another 100 years.
Yes, absolutely. And women have a huge part to play in that. So I accept the job offer, by the way.
Okay. I don't know how much it pays though, so we'll talk about that offline.
Exactly. However, I mean, I think this is a great illustration, though, of your point, which is like for me, when it's aligned, I literally would do it for free. And the double-edged sword of that is inside of our corporations where we have metrics and we have growth targets and we have 100 years plus of legacy to honor. And I think this resonates in Europe too, right? Like we've got companies that have been around for a very long time that are now looking for new ways to grow. And that includes women and other diverse audiences. And so for us to, as leaders, carry forward this analytical and this KPI driven approach is really important to me, because we cannot be expected to do this work for free inside of organizations. This work has to be valued. This work has to be measured. This work has to be connected to the impact that we want our companies to have for the long road, in order to have the same sort of check and balance that, top line and numbers, that the check and balance exists. So what are you seeing at Ford in the context of the future and in the industry even? What are you seeing that gives you hope for the next 100 years or at least the rest of your career?
Gosh, there's so much. I'll tell you for women specifically. In my last role, I had the opportunity to really try to transfer knowledge about different technology and innovation and how our operation teams, whether it was powertrain or vehicle, could leverage those technologies. Things like additive manufacturing, things like artificial intelligence, vision, and digital thread. Like, how do we better leverage those things in our facilities? And I hired some fantastic people, and I'm always looking to pull women along, right? But I'm telling you, when women were the best candidates to do this work, like I was like, heck yeah. So I've always tried to surround myself with people who are smarter than I am. I'm okay not being the smartest person in the room, right? I'm absolutely okay with that, because it's my job to develop and cultivate teams to win. But seeing that women are taking on more and more challenging roles in this company is it's invigorating. It's absolutely, I love smart women. I absolutely love smart women. So I think there is a lot of opportunity coming in electrification with technology. And there's a lot of places for women that we haven't typically played.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, the type of projects that we can find ourselves involved in right now is just like so mind-blowing. It's exciting. There's always something new on every corner. There's a question that came through from the audience that's kind of related. So, you and I, we're high vibration. We're like on fire, high energy, interested in innovation. We're going to fight for what we believe in. What do you say to those who maybe are having challenges with their leaders? The question is like, how can I be a good leader if I have a boss that's not this kind of leader?
Oh, that is
tough, huh? It is a tough one.
No, but it's a fantastic quote. And if I'm honest, it's super relevant. I know sometimes people assume that if you work for a woman, they're automatically going to be a better leader. And I've found that not always to be true. And this is that detour / scenic route thing again. My personal motto is in spite of. So like, in spite of whatever challenge we're presented with, we have to figure it out. And I would say that at Ford, where I see us really growing and trying to strengthen relationships is through employee resource groups. we have some fantastic employee resource groups that are broader than just Women of Ford. Shout out to my Women of Ford team, right? We have different networks that when we intersect and we work on challenges, that's community. That's community. That's people who have like interest that can really help. Again, I don't have to be from your skill team to figure, to help you maybe navigate a situation in the company.
Right.
Whether it's political, if it's I have a leader that maybe doesn't support X, Y, or Z, or they're not recognizing my effort in trying to invest in people because there might not be a KPI specific to it. You know what? I know it's still the right thing to do, and I can leverage employee resource groups to kind of help me. But also, this is the place where if you're a leader in the company and you're a people leader and you're not, I think it's our responsibility to try to tap into the best version of everybody, whether they're an introvert or an extrovert, whether their top 5 Clifton matches mine or not. And if you're not actively doing that, then I would ask you why. Why not?
Yeah.
And as a person in that group, if your leader doesn't support that, if you work at Ford and I can help, reach out. And again, I might not have all the answers, but let's work on it together, because I think the company truly is committed to our Ford OS behaviors. We're committed to excellence, collaboration, and focus. So please don't be discouraged. Keep doing it. It's the right thing. And in spite of.
Yes, in spite of. Girl, this is like a little "In Spite Of" by April Stevens. Like I see a column. I see.
Oh boy.
And for me, it's "You can count on me too." You can count on me to do this thing, or to fill in the sentence. There's a lot of disagreements between people and their bosses. I mean, it's like one of the most quoted reason why people leave a job. And that's something that I've done. I've left a job because of a boss real quick. But I think in the middle of our careers, or as we're sort of, learning, who we are and what they can count on us for, in spite of, I think there's a good practice in just being really clear about, what you contribute to the team, and to showcase that with, anyone above you, whether it's in a situation where, there's a disagreement or there's a conflict, knowing that what your contributions are, and knowing what you value first and foremost about the work that you do, is something that you have the responsibility to talk about, because your boss, especially that one, is not a mind reader. And so I think we have to take ownership of the telling of the story that is our story, that, is, what am I here to do? Why is this not in alignment? In a respectful way, especially in some of these, companies that are undertaking transformation and that have a long heritage and a lot of legacy in a more global working environment. For us to be in control of the narrative,
Yes,
being able to tell a story, a good story, starting with our own, is really, really important. And to me, I find it like really empowering. And then to ask for help, like your boss is part of, there may be some conflict, but part of their responsibility is to equip you to be all that you can be in the responsibilities that you have. And if exposing those differences is part of the conflict, then this is a great skill to learn, honey. Like learning how to negotiate for what you want. The earlier we do it, the better. And why not do it in a way that's truly authentic to what the kind of leader that we want to have in the world. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. There's another question I really like. Do you have any advice for the introverts that are early in their career and trying to build a strong network and career path?
Learn as much as you possibly can about the company. And I'll go back to leverage employee resource groups, get involved, raise your hand. Like I am constantly surprised at how uncomfortable it still is for people to say, I'm interested in doing that, or I will take on this assignment. And it's sometimes I think it's the fear of the unknown and not understanding expectations. But there are so many opportunities to get involved and to really grow your network. And I said, whether it's employee resource groups or mentoring, I meet so many people just through the course of whether it's at world headquarters or if it's, in a plant. And it's just like being really genuinely interested in their story is how I uncover things about the business that if you're not curious, you'll never know.
Yeah, I love this. Get to know your company really well. Get to know the leaders.
Yeah.
Follow them on LinkedIn. Comment on their LinkedIn. Read every email that comes from the executive team. Like, I'm sure you all get like a ton of email, but like read the ones that come from the CEO, that come from the top, that like try to connect with that. I think also in networking situation, like introduce yourself, go up to people, shake their hand. Hello, my name is Caroline. You can count on me to help you tell a good story, starting with your own. Like have something that few words. It doesn't have to be an elevator pitch. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to start, but it's like, it's like you're going to run into these situations where you're going to have the opportunity to meet the leaders. And this is a topic that came up at the Europe Summit this year, like stand out, do something that the others are not doing. And it doesn't have to be, crazy. It could literally be, it doesn't have to be a crazy extroverted thing like I would do, but it can just be to shake someone's hand and say, oh, hey, you're Elena Ford. What's up, girl? I'm Caroline. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but like there are opportunities that show up for you to showcase your ability to create a network, to be seen, and to maybe get the opportunity to be remembered when a career opportunity could come up. Yeah.
And we kind of talked about this. If you're not comfortable telling your story, who's going to advocate for you? If you don't educate people on who you are and what you believe in, how can you be disappointed if you don't get that next opportunity? If your people leader doesn't advocate on your behalf, right?
Yeah.
If you don't self-advocate, how can you be disappointed that somebody isn't advocating for you?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, we got one more question I want to take from the audience. I would love to hear how April, as an introvert, has showcased her wins to leadership. I'm looking for tips and techniques. Thank you. This is from Jennifer.
Oh boy. So still work in progress. So that's a tough question, but thank you for it. It's a good reminder. I think a lot of it has been, I've done some really cool things at Ford.
Yeah.
I was building a greenfield paint shop in Mexico during the pandemic, and we had 900 people walk off the job. Like, yeah, we're not doing this thing. And we know we have a timeline. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm sitting in Dearborn, Michigan, like nobody's working. There's a pandemic. But guess what? The timeline didn't move. So I think it's been through opportunities like that where you really focus on controlling the inputs and building confidence in decision makers that has helped do the talking for me. And that's not always good enough. So still a work in progress, but I'm someone who's really tried to pride myself on focusing on inputs, leading indicators, things that will tell the story before it's done, and building confidence in decision makers in that regard. So I know that's kind of high level and generic, but it's also been, sometimes I've said yes to things that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
things that I was like, oh boy, here it comes. Like I'm going to fail. And that's not in my DNA, man. I still have this crazy, okay, I'm going to nerd out for a minute. So I have a Presidential Academic Fitness Award from 1985 signed by Ronald Reagan.
What? This is new.
Yeah, I know. This is, so you see, you have me thinking. So last night I'm looking through this book of like wins. You got to track the wins, right?
Yes.
It's so easy in this environment to be like, oh my gosh, we didn't do that very well. Or, oh, this could have been better, right? We get that kind of feedback.
Yeah, it's so easy to think about the stuff we messed up.
I have this little book of wins that I dug out, and I found this thing, Don't Judge Me, signed by Ronald Reagan. And it talked about dedication and hard work and academic excellence being the foundation for your future success. And I was like, well, damn, Ronald got that right back in 85. Like,
Ronald told you. He told you in the 1900s.
Hey, girl. It wasn't Abraham Lincoln. But anyway, right. So a lot of it is in believing in ourselves. And sometimes you do have to take on that thing that scares you the most, because that is where a lot of pride comes from, is finishing that greenfield paint shop during the pandemic, because
Girl, I love the story.
you were able to do the right thing by your team, be the voice for your team in an environment there was a lot of unknowns. But guess what? We still delivered it. We found a way, but it would not have been possible without the team. So sometimes being mama bear and, being the voice for the team has been the role that I've had to play. But I will take, if the team does bad, that's on me. If the team does good, I'm happy to shine the light. And I think that's just part of my DNA. So, yeah, I would say sometimes you got to do the stuff that you're like, wow, am I really doing this? Because that's where growth has come for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to add the extroverted perspective real quick. Write your name on everything you produce. By Caroline Trudeau. So that, even if it's a report, even if it gets cut out, even if it gets like screenshotted, like everything that comes out of you should be autographed, like art. It should have some sort of attribution back to you, especially in this age of, robots and AI and where, we don't know where anything's coming from. So I want more ownership over what I create, and I want my work to be part of my body of work as we go into the future. I think building confidence from the decision makers is like key. When you hit on that, yeah, you got to be good, right? Like you can't expect, you have to master your craft, your capabilities, you got to be good at what you do. You got to be persuasive, right? Like you got to be capable of showcasing the stuff that you're able to do. Like, these are my capabilities. This is what I can take on. In my corporate career, what I realized is that, the guys wanted me to focus on one thing, and turns out I could do 100 things. So now as an introvert, or as an entrepreneur, an introvert, that's cute.
I was like, what just happened?
What just happened? Like this book of wins, I am so hot for that, because I keep like quarterly, on a quarterly basis, I look at my business and I go, what are all the things that I have to celebrate? Because these are wins that may not turn out checks right now, that may not be top line driven or cost reducing, but these are the clues that I am being the change I want to see in the world. A book of just a little recap of like, wow, what are the things that I have to pause and celebrate in order to really continue to see these things top of mind. So when I get the chance to talk about it, I am able to have a conversation with somebody who might ask me. So we're almost out of time. I want to find out before we leave, are you hiring? How do the people get in touch with you? The vibe is strong. What's happening? How do we get in touch with you?
So Ford is absolutely hiring. We are always seeking new talent. So LinkedIn is a fantastic way to hit up a lot of people. You'll see.
I know.
Different. So if you're not being a LinkedIn, and I'm always like, I need to be more active on LinkedIn. But another way to find us is careers.ford.com. So a lot of fantastic opportunities that are in the company, whether you're interested in EVs, or if you're interested in operations or in engineering or marketing and sales, like that. That's a fantastic resource to see where Ford has needs. So please hit us up, careers.ford.com.
And April Stevens on LinkedIn. Same for me, Caroline Trudeau. Everybody is invited to connect. We keep in touch. We keep the love going. I always end these conversations with the same question. I always save the same question for last, to push us off into maybe a little bit of a optimistic and inspiring future. So the question is, in one word, how do you describe the opportunities, especially for introverts, in the automotive industry right now?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit here, but my word is pie.
Yes. I love pie. Thank you. I'm so glad you brought it. You're so adorable in how you brought it. Tell me more about pie.
So, yes, I love pie. I have a lot of bad habits, and pie might be some of them. But this is performance, image, and exposure. So this is a nugget that my dad said, okay, if you're going to work at Ford, keep this in mind, right? So performance matters. It absolutely matters, right? We got to keep doing better for our customers and for the company and for the people who count on us for their families. Image, there's a lot to unpack in image, right? What is your image? What is your brand? And I think I've grown in what that might be, right? I truly do. My why. So we have these, what's your why for Ford? Your one Ford plan. What's your why? My why really is to make a difference for the people. But the exposure piece, and it's funny. So I have a fantastic leader who reminded me that you can die from exposure. So this is good, right? Everything has its boundaries, but performance, image, exposure. So, how are you impacting the day to day? Image, how are you showing up even when people aren't looking? That's super important about what is your brand. And then the exposure that you get. And so sometimes that is taking on an assignment that you're like, gosh, was that really in my plan, or is this a detour? Because I've had a lot of detours that have been just remarkable in shaping who I am. Some good, some bad, but I've tried to learn from all of it and keep it moving. And then, that exposure piece it's huge. It is that self-advocacy. It is building a network with decision makers that sometimes remember you, and they might say, even if you didn't apply for a job, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested? That is super critical.
Pie. I love it. One word that's delicious. And that also leaves a lot of food for thought. See how I did that? Yeah. Mine is love, as always, because we all have this emotion, no matter how much we want to keep it separated. We bring our love to work. And I want to encourage everybody here to dig in a little bit deeper, hopefully inspired by this conversation, into what do you love about your work, so that we can bring it forward with all of the energy of the most powerful emotion in the world. So with that, join us next month for the next leadership interview. We're going to wrap it up with a very warm thank you, April. Seriously, thank you so much for making the time to join us, for telling us your story, for being an advocate for the network, for preparing, for having an intimate dialogue here today. You're amazing. And I know that you've inspired a gang of people right here, right now, this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Women Automotive Network, for what you're doing to highlight women who are truly investing in other people, other women. And I got to quote Ram Dass: the quieter you become, the more you can hear. So don't underestimate the quiet leaders.
On that note, namaste. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.